in 2008, I was at a company called Liberty League International,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think that you know where this is going. I met a guy named Jeremy Miner there, and we were both kind of two of the younger guys in the company, and we got along well. And he kind of took me under his wing as we were both kind of brand new at the same time. And I didn't know his background in sales, and he started just crushing, like just
Yep.
for one producer in the whole company. And I said, "How are you doing it?" And he's like, "Well, there's this guy, Michael Oliver, and you should check out his book." And I went through that. So I can see the similarities
You
with
you
what,
heard it here, folks, on the Side Hustle, Side Hustle.
yeah.
Jeremy
So
was asking about Michael Oliver.
It's ironic, isn't it, that you say that, he says that, he's actually written it. I've got a verification of that. I actually have audio of that. And yet somehow or other, he now believes his own narrative. It's like he made all this stuff up, that he got it from no one else. I mean, and it's amazing how the mind how you can trick your mind into basically accepting a lie. And yet there you go, 2008, and he's actually telling you where he got it all from. And yet, later on when he forms his own company, he decides that he was the one who made it all up. It's really, really quite fascinating.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Side Hustle podcast, where we bring on hustlers from every area of industry, entrepreneurs up to moguls selling seven-figure businesses, multiple seven-figure businesses we've had on the show. And we have the privilege today of having Michael Oliver, natural selling. Quentin, you ran into Michael and somehow convinced him to come on our tiny podcast.
well, yeah. I mean, I feel like, and I haven't shared this with you, Michael, but you and we actually connected through this many years ago. And this might be news to you, but we also take a vacation together twice a year. And what I mean by that is that I have the audio CDs as well. So I go to Tofino in the fall and summer. So I do 2 trips to Tofino, and every time I go there, I go through that entire curriculum. So your audio is like kind of neuro-programmed into my vacation mode, because I'm driving on the island there to Tofino, listening to all your training through that. So yeah, you've been a big part of my life for a long time. So it's an honor to finally kind of meet you here. And plus, we're neighbors. We're just across the bay here. You're on the other side in Vancouver here.
So you're finding that audio is still current then, is that right?
You know what's so interesting about it? And I've got your book here, and I've also got the right here, the 5 stages.
Right.
And the thing that's so interesting about it, we kind of talked briefly before we got on about all the new kind of sales gurus out there. They're just repackaging what you put together 2002. Like a lot of the kind of more advanced people in the industry, I think, are aware of you and kind of your legacy of launching this dialogue, communication skills, problem-based selling. But for people that are just kind of new on TikTok, seeing the new gurus, they might not know that you're kind of like the original presenter of all this material. So that's why it's so great to have you here.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Well, there's a lot of people who don't know the original presenter. There's those who do know, but claim basically the philosophy and the content to be their own without any acknowledgement, which is really sad. But that's the way it goes. I mean, the plagiarism from 1 or 2 people is really quite rife overall. It doesn't take much just to acknowledge people. I mean, I acknowledge everyone that I learned from before I finally came up with this aha idea about, especially the philosophy behind it.
Right.
And none of those people have gone through the depths that I've gone, which is basically to reinforce the kind of spirituality side of the whole thing. Call it what you want, but I mean, that's the energy side. And having taken a number of courses with Deepak Chopra and the Chopra Center, and actually taught natural selling and the 7 spiritual laws of success and how they work together at the Chopra Center, that kind of stuff, you've in many ways you've really got to sort of tune into beforehand and want to understand that, and in order to get to the depth of what's behind it, because it goes far deeper than the subconscious. And most of those sales programs don't even touch into the subconscious. So intellectually, they talk about it. Intellectually, they'll bring it up. But the real key is how do you manage to convey that to someone so that they're no longer coming from that logical level and coming from the more emotional level without using techniques. I mean, and a lot of them are taught to use the emotional level, but use it as a manipulative approach, as opposed to just letting it naturally happen and naturally flow. So that's the big difference. But yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up, and I'm glad the stuff is still current there.
It is, and one of the things that I think I resonated so much with it as well is Deepak and the Seven Spiritual Laws of Success was like one of my favorite books and one of the first ever personal development books I ever did read. So the similarity of the crossover between you and him in sales is kind of no wonder I resonated with it so much. So yeah, that's fantastic.
It was really serendipitous that I came across that, because I started training this in 1977, and
Wow.
people would come up to me, yeah, way before anyone that came up with this stuff. But I blended a lot of things. But what I found was the essential ingredient was the ability to detach, was to let go of the sale, and to do it from within, not as a technique. I mean, you can do it as a technique. A lot of people do, the takeaway, so to speak, but be
Yeah.
able to get inside and uh, to resonate from that area so that you could free yourself from all the junk in your mind so that you could really concentrate on where the other person is coming from, find out, in fact, if they need any help. But the interesting thing is that before that, then I'd been doing that about 4 years, and people would come up to me. My students would come up to me, and they were talking. They taught me a lot about the kind of the fundamental subconscious and unconscious principle aspects of it. And it was when I was on a beach in California. I was living in La Jolla at the time, and was
Nice.
reading a book. I was going, no wonder that they're coming at me. I get this now. And those principles were fitting so well into, not principles, those laws,
Yeah.
Deepak's laws and principles were fitting so well together. So much so I thought, okay, I really need to dig more deeply into this, because now I have that fundamental backup. It's no longer anecdotal. This is for real.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was really exciting. But I still have the book, and I've got notes scribbled onto it, stuff underlined, going,
Yeah.
wow, this is like fireworks.
Truly, truly, yeah. And Rob's got a pretty extensive background in basically sales and on the financial services side. And we kind of watch a lot of kind of sales training and go back and forth a lot. But Rob, any thoughts on the new school and old school sales
Well, I
practices
kind
that
of
you've seen over the years?
transitioned those being born in the 60s, kind of in maybe somewhere in between you two, closer to Michael's age. But looking at his website, I mean, these are not just new or old; these are 1,000-year-old principles. I think that Michael's touching on with his
Yeah.
course and his book, going back to 2002, and just having reviewed them briefly. I haven't read the book. I'll be open about that. Haven't had a chance yet. But Quentin, you owe me a book, so
There
there
you
you
go.
go. We'll get that one tonight. But these selling principles are thousands of years old, and it takes someone like Michael. For the listeners out here, check out his website. It's I believe naturalselling.com. But these principles are thousands and thousands of years old, and all Michael's done is simplified it and put it into a book and into a course. And there's a lot of copycats out there. And what I always say, Michael, we've had some copying the things that we're doing in the industry, some slightly revolutionary things. It's okay to be a copycat as long as you copy the right cat. And being the first one out with these principles, guaranteed people are going to come out and copy you. Success breeds success. But like you said in the opening, it's nice to get some recognition once in a while. Everybody likes to get effed. F, that's the sign language for you know what. But it's nice to get kissed once in a while too. Get that
Well,
recognition.
yeah, I mean, tell you the truth, it's not that important to me. I mean, it would have been years ago when my ego was probably sort of on fire a little bit more. I just learned over the years, basically, to get rid of the ego and just come from a different place, and it's more of a peaceful place.
And
I
that's why
just,
we waited till this year to get you on the podcast, right? Just
well,
10
yeah.
years ago, we wouldn't have had a chance.
Well, who knows? If you wait until next year, I might be asleep. So Yeah, just to pick up on the book side, what you're talking about there. The one that Quentin showed was my first book, which is a bestseller, and it was actually focused on network marketing, but it is applicable to all sales. And it was actually titled. A good friend of mine gave me the title. He said, "Know how to sell network marketing without fear, anxiety, or losing your friends." The book that you might want to look at, if you haven't already done so, is my latest book. Is an ebook which you can get online. It's called How to Sell the Way People Buy, because that will give you the reasons why people resist, not you necessarily, but why people resist salespeople. Now, three major reasons why they do that: so either reject or bring up objections, resistance, that type of thing. And then sort of how do you get around that based on the five natural selling principles? And it's more of a why book than it is a how book. The how is in the course, the online course. And what I say to people, read that. If it resonates you, then I suggest you get the course. If it doesn't resonate with you, then don't get the course. I mean, it's not a kind of a do or die thing. It's not going to change my life in any way, but do what you sort of feel is right for you. And whether sales is really something you want to do. When you talk about the financial industry, yeah, I train one-on-one quite a number of, or have done quite a number of financial consultants. I mean, the financial industry is so varied; it's incredible. I mean, you can be an expert in sort of one thing, as take the whole global thing, take one thing as and then sort of be very successful in that. So I've worked with a number of those guys, and it works very, very well. It manages to separate them from the standard toe-to-toe salesperson who's out there trying to flog all various life insurances and God knows what else.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I really enjoyed about your book, and I have gone through your second one there as well, the ebook that you mentioned, your latest, and it's fantastic. People should check that out as well. But in your original here, you say to create a personal introduction, right? Because when people say that they're a realtor, that means nothing to people, right? It just kind of puts you into this big, box of all the other realtors out there. But I wanted to ask you this. Can I show you my personal introduction and get your feedback on it within the financial industry?
Yeah, sure.
So when someone is at like a party or networking event, they always ask, "Well, what do you do?" And then when I say, "Well, you know how the cost of living and inflation is getting kind of out of hand and it really preventing people from getting ahead financially and causing some problems with the day-to-day bills and responsibilities." What I do is help people put together a financial plan and protection around their family so they can hit their financial goals to have more freedom and flexibility in their day-to-day life, especially if they're kind of in a job they don't really like. How about you? What do you do? How's
Nice.
that?
Yeah, nice. Very good. You got that well down. You got that down pat there. Yeah.
I had somebody, we just got back. We're doing a 12 city tour here across Canada. We were in Toronto, and this woman, we had a draw to invite people to the baseball game, a few select winners that were coming out to the show. So we got to, meet them one on one, spend a little time with them. You got them for 9 innings in a baseball game. And she says, "Oh, so Mr. Taxes, so what do you do?" And I said, "Plumbing and heating. What do you think we do?" It's just people get in those habits of just spitting, at networking events or meeting somebody for the first time. "Oh, what do you do?" Without actually looking, or finding out a little bit about the person before you meet them. Like you're coming on today, we looked at your book a little bit. Quentin's actually read it because he's the one who connected through your original book in 2002. And he said, "Hey, I got a great guest we got to get on here. He's one of the original, how to and in sales guys." And, there's hundreds of probably thousands of copycats. Go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you this, and this is verified. How I actually heard about you, Michael, and your book was in 2008. I was you're talking about the personal development industry. So I was at a company called Liberty League International,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that you know where this is going. I met a guy named Jeremy Miner there, and we were both kind of two of the younger guys in the company, and we got along well. And he kind of took me under his wing as we were both kind of brand new at the same time. And I didn't know his background in sales, and he started just crushing, like just
Yep.
for one producer in the whole company. And I said, "How are you doing it?" And he's like, "Well, there's this guy, Michael Oliver, and you should check out his book." And I went through that. So I can see the similarities
You
with
you heard it here, folks, on the Side Hustle.
Yeah.
Jeremy
So
was asking about Michael Oliver, so the cat's out of the bag.
It's ironic, isn't it, that you say that, he says that, he's actually written it. I've got a verification of that. I actually have audio of that. And yet somehow or other, he now believes his own narrative that he made all this stuff up, that he got it from no one else. I mean, and it's amazing how the mind how you can trick your mind into basically accepting a lie. And yet there you go, 2008, and he's actually telling you where he got it all from. And yet, later on when he forms his own company, he decides that he was the one who made it all up. It's really, really quite fascinating.
well, I believe when he left Liberty League and you two were working together, what was Digital Altitude? Were you involved in doing training for them as well, or?
No, not so much
Okay.
with that. He was involved with 2 or 3 companies,
Yeah.
and the first company, he actually flew up to see me for 2 days, where I did a training with him. And then there was follow-up calls, on the phone, and he took him. Within 8 months, he was the top of that company.
Yeah.
Went from, like, he was already doing quite well, $200,000, something like that. I think he took it up to $600,000. And each company that he went to, because those companies, in essence, were affiliate marketing companies, and
Right.
they folded after a while. And I was the trainer for most of them, for all of them. In fact, in one of them, he even claimed that he was the trainer, but there's all the documentation showing it wasn't. In fact, the person who I did this for actually paid me. So I mean, again, there's all this sort of change in narrative, as it were. But he zoomed to the top on all those companies. He had a very unique way of sort of in sort of approaching people in his own way. But there was a lot of a lot of people don't know this, but there was a lot of, how can it? It's what's the stuff when you throw overboard a ship? Backlash to it. Things weren't always what they seemed. Those companies had to go back and clear up a lot of mess in the background there. Uh, there's a lot of evidence of doing that, from things that were missed and so on and so forth. So the essential element between he and what others have copied as well is really the first 2 principles of natural selling, which is about detachment and purpose. And while others will talk about that, they're not able to actually express it in the sense of how do you yourself emotionally go there, from creating sort of an empathetic way of talking with people, and then gradually absorb it yourself, so that you can connect with that person on that level of energy, as opposed to a level of a salesperson. I talk with some of my clients who've taken my course, not necessarily my one-on-one coaching with them, and ask them, so when you enter a conversation, do you ever think yourself, I said, be honest with me, do you ever think of yourself as being a salesperson, or as someone who is there to help, a counselor, someone who has no vested interest in making any money? And it's amazing how, and even though they are successful in doing what they're doing, and they realize they're missing something, there's an edge or a link that they're missing. Invariably, I would say 3/4 of them say, I still feel as though I'm like a salesperson. That's an energy.
Yeah.
And that's something which I don't know if any other trainer is able to convey, which is a lot of what I do in one-on-one coaching. So it's a switch in the brain. So it goes from logic with emotion into boom, okay, subconscious and unconscious, straight into there, so you become that person. And that's really, really the essence. And I'll share with you, you probably read this in the book there. It says, one of my favorite sayings is from Rumi, Sufi saint, who said, beyond the wrongdoing and the right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there.
Yeah.
But you have, and it's not that there's necessarily wrongdoing or right doing. It's just like, there's one side and there's the other. It's just a matter of coming to that place before you even pick up the phone, that you're into that energy, that zone, into that flow. So that person immediately picks up on it. And so that the words you're saying now resonate with what you're thinking. And I can tell very quickly from when someone talks to me, literally within 2 or 3 sentences, exactly where they're coming from by just listening to the words that they're saying.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. It does. You know, I lived in Asia for 10 years. So I was out of Canada for about 10 years and I moved back 4 years ago, beginning of COVID. And I love the whole, like you said, the spiritual philosophy that you kind of interweave within your sales training and in the book with these great quotes of, you know, you mentioned Buddha a few times and just these other kind of spiritual leaders. And it all comes down to, like you said, kind of energy and being, you know, it reminds me the last company I was working with before teaming up with Rob here, the CEO was listening to my calls, and he's like, "You're completely opposite from all the other salespeople that we have." Because I would be very calm, very low profile, like just kind of not like super excited and things like that. But
Yeah.
usually my numbers at the end of the month were, you know, better than the people that were really kind of hypey sales, because that, like you said in the beginning of the call, that kind of creates that resistance, and it's just more of a calm conversation and seeing if there even is a problem that we can possibly help solve.
You know, and the truth is that's a problem for some salespeople who work for companies whereby they have a standard set script and all that sort of
Right.
stuff, which is why when I talk about scripting, I don't talk about scripting, you know, have a script. I call it a guideline script, natural selling guideline script, because, you know, the question comes up, is conversation linear? And the answer is no, conversation is non-linear. And so if you're following a script, then what you're doing is you're following your own need to follow a script, following your own need to get somewhere where you want to go. Whereas if you let it flow and if you understand it in the process, the different types of questions to ask, and you don't have to ask all of them, which a lot of people think you do. You don't have to ask all of them, is that you let it flow. And when you let it flow, you're in a flow and the other person is in a flow. So it's always a guideline script. And the struggle for a lot of salespeople who are in the corporate world is that their corporate masters, i.e., their sales manager or sales trainer, is saying, "Hey, listen, don't do it this your way. Do it this way. This is what we know works." Well, it kind of works, but the point is, it causes conflict, as opposed to
Right.
sales would be a wise person saying, "Okay, so what are you actually doing? Let's listen in, because obviously something is right here. You seem like a happy person. You're not under stress. You meet quota each month. You exceed quota. You're as good as or better than the other salespeople. What is it you're doing?" They don't do that. Why? Because there's ego and turf involved. You know, I mean, and if they do, and the general term is, you know, we've been doing this for years, and we're doing what works. Yeah, but it only works to a certain extent. How would you like to make it work? You know, completely
Yeah.
like a flower just opening, as opposed to just sort of struggling to open. Anyway, you know, it's kind of interesting to see and analyze all this. But I do feel sorry for those salespeople. In fact, there's a couple of clients of mine who said, "What do I do? Because I'm being hammered on this." And I said, "You've got a choice. You know, either you talk with your sales manager, which I know you've done, and tell them that they've got to leave you alone, or you've got to find somewhere else to work,
Yeah.
because you're in conflict with them." And it's really hard to do that. And
I
one
I really like that. That's I think the analogy there is that there's hard skills and there's soft skills. You know,
yeah,
I was never a big sales guy. Some people are averse to sales, but I've had to overcome that, and you know, reading books like yours and all the other books out there. But I remember seeing a movie when I was younger, and you know, I'll be 60 in 3 years here, but the movie was called Tin Men. And it was a
yeah,
bunch of sales guys when aluminum siding first come out, and they're competing against each other. And one of the guys, he said, "How are you getting your sales numbers up there?" And he said, "It's easy. I cut 6 inches out of the middle of the yardstick and glued it back together. So every 3 feet, he got an extra 6 inches of sale." And you know, there's a whole ethics side as well, which you touched on earlier there about some companies having to go back and you know, clean up their act, so to speak. And there's one other older sales guy, Harvey McKay. I don't know if you know that name, but
yeah,
he's got this list. It's called the McKay 25, and he was one of the top sales guys, I think, in the print industry, envelope salesman. But he said, "I'm the world's greatest envelope salesman." And what he did, he had a list of 25 questions that he just filled in the blanks through a conversation. And one of them, for example, I think half of those questions we can find out online before we even talk to a client now. One of them is, where do you go to school? Do you have siblings? You know, where did you grow up? Did you always live in this town? And it's just a random 25 questions and he kept this before CRMs and before the digital age. He kept all these on a card. and he filled it in as every time he talked to somebody. And he would ask, he wouldn't say, okay, where did you go to school? Check. Do you have siblings? Check. What's their names? It would just be through conversation. He remembered all those questions and he wove them into the conversation. And by the end, people were just wanting to buy from him without even, asking for the sale sometimes.
Yeah. I bet you, though, he did a lot more than just ask that question.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
You know, I mean, a lot of times, I can remember many years ago, 20 years ago, uh, going to a broker. It was it a broker? Yeah, it was, no, it was an insurance broker. And going to train his team. And he gave me a list of 100 questions to ask. And I looked at that list and I said, are you expecting everyone to fill all this out? And they said, yeah, we need to fill them out before we'll talk with them. And I was going, this is interesting. I wonder why that happened. And I looked at it and I found that most of them were what I would call background questions, basically logical questions. And then it came up that, if they don't answer 3 of those questions in a certain way, then we know that we can't do business with them. Well, I couldn't find those questions, but at that time I realized that there was no real point in going further with this because they were locked into this thing, whereas I was not locked into anything. I'm not even locked in with what I do. If you can come up with some adjustment or so on, I'm adjusting all the time. I like to follow Bertrand Russell, who's a philosopher in the United Kingdom last century, who said, I've never died for my beliefs because I could be wrong. I think that's a great quote to follow. It doesn't mean say you wouldn't die for your beliefs, but it's the Zen behind that, it's the thinking behind that, saying don't get locked into your beliefs. And so, and it was interesting sort of how he had this 100 list questionnaire. And I looked at it and I thought, at the same time, though, there's some great questions here that if asked at the right time, okay, and expanded upon, really you can get into the emotional side. So you're going from logical to logical personal, what I call logical personal, and then sort of emotional subjective, personal reasons. And it's like calling a lead. I can get somebody's buying blueprint within 5 to 7 questions and create a relationship and trust within those 5 to 7 questions if I'm calling a lead. And the way to do that is that you're looking for what it is they're wanting, which is logical. And you're looking for why they want it, which is usually the reply they give you is going to give you a personal logical reason. So it's like sort of, what are you looking for? I'm looking for a new car. Okay, so to be very blunt on the questions, you don't phrase the questions this way. So why do you want a new car? Because I want to be able to get to work on time. All right. That is a personal logical, it's still logical. But if you dig deeper, you can get the complete emotional, subjective reasoning, which is unique to them. And when you start talking about that and you start qualifying the depth of their need, as it were, and the importance of that need, and that you're going qualifying literally 5 to 7 questions, you've got their buying blueprint. More importantly, who else has their buying blueprint? They do. They've got it. They've got it locked in. Now you got something to talk about. Yet most salespeople, though, will dive in right away with all the background stuff. Hi, how are you? Where do you live? What do you do? How long have you been doing it? All that stuff. It's a time waster in the context of calling leads. In the context of in other lead generation, such as if you're talking with someone, maybe in a networking meeting, for example, it might work. But even a network meeting, I've got it fine-tuned. I mean, I can go to one network meeting and basically go through a room in an hour and find out everything I need as to whether it's worthwhile going back to another networking meeting. And I'll give you the clue. The question I ask is, I go up to someone, I introduce myself, and they say, "Hi, I'm Michael Oliver of Natural Selling." Or maybe I say something like, "Hi, Robert. I'm Michael Oliver of Natural Selling. If you don't mind, let me ask you a question. What's the biggest challenge that you face in your business right now? That if you could overcome it, would make a huge difference in your business. If it has nothing to do with selling." And I say, "Well, so what's the second biggest challenge?" And if it has nothing to do with selling, I say, "Is there a third biggest challenge?" And if it has nothing to do with selling, I say, "I appreciate you spending the time with me. It's not something I can do to help you with. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to move on to somebody else." They will probably say, "Well, what is it you do?" I give them my how, my personal introduction speech. And sometimes what will pop out and say, I know that you can't help me, but I know someone else you should be talking with. And literally it takes 2 minutes.
Right.
And if you've got a room, you've got 45 minutes or an hour, you can talk with a lot of people. And the reason is that you're talking about them and what they're looking for, trying to work out whether what you've got is trying to link with where they're coming from. And it's dead easy, as opposed to trying to sell people on the idea and tell them what it is that you're doing. Makes common sense, but in fact, hardly anyone does it. You do that and you just outshone your competition.
I feel like I just got goosebumps hearing you say that, because I've been hearing you, like I said, on these audio CDs for like over a decade now, and it's just so surreal, like just seeing you say the very similar things right now. So this has been very cool. I wanted to ask, because Rob, he's been in the industry a long time and very humble as well. He's one of the top 20 insurance advisors in Canada. They fly him out to all the big Canada Life events and Financial Horizons. I'm curious, what would you recommend would be a good personal introduction for Rob, being in more so the life insurance industry and accounting?
I don't know. I'd have to. I think it's, to a certain extent, it's personal. I mean, the structure of the personal introduction is really threefold. The first one is defining a problem. The second one is coming up with a solution with a non-salesy, saying, hey, we've got the best thing or whatever. Is to keep it really low key, but focusing on solving the problem. And the third one is one of three things. You ask a question such as, what do you do? Which probably wouldn't be relevant in your case. But another question could be sort of, have you ever experienced this? Or however the question is. Or sometimes you just shut up. You don't say anything.
Yeah.
I mean, silence is what? Silence is golden.
Yeah.
You leave it silent long enough, people will start telling you stuff that they've never told anyone else before. So the first part is really about trying to work out what is it that's missing. First of all, you got to look at your audience. So
Right.
what is it that's missing in a generic way? I mean, if you could find out specifically what is missing in that person's life or business, whatever it is, then you can bring that up. I mean, you could even say, somebody might say, so what is it you do? Well, how last time we were talking, you were telling me how you were totally frustrated with whatever it is because of this, that, and the other. I mean, that is in itself a different way of introducing yourself, but you've got to create a logical and also put a bit of emotion in there. So, for example, in yours, the one that you gave me, I would put in a bit of emotion at the front end, just to switch at the moment, talking in terms maybe frustrating. How a lot of people are frustrated about, and that sets the tone. Maybe it's a different word, but just one little word in there can create an emotional trigger, then has people focusing. So it's a bit hard for me to come up with something, Robert, without sort of knowing precisely what it is that you do. And then we would work out something. And then the second part of that, the solution is simply sort of, how do you solve that problem? So what we do is, for example, unlike other brokers, other companies, other whatever it is that we focus on this because we found that to be more effective, to be able to give people the peace of mind, and to remove the frustration or the whatever it is, and you can end up by asking a question, have you ever felt that way? Is this something that might work for you? Or have you found that kind of frustration yourself? You end up with a question at the end there. I don't know if that was helpful to you, Robert.
It is.
It's a bit hard just to get right in there. You're on mute.
You have to narrow in. You have to narrow in sometimes just through the conversation, and then you circle back. Speaking about copycats, this is one of the reasons why we did this 12 city tour. It's an appreciation event. Most of our clients, 25,000 plus, we've never met personally. And even our team members have never met them because of the digital age. So we brought out two top comedians. And one of the things, we're inviting mortgage brokers. There's a service that we offer the mortgage industry. We're able to get tax documents online with CRA. And there was a bunch of copycat companies that popped up, just like you have the I won't mention names, but I'll mention initials, JM, and all the other crew out there that copy, they're copying everybody else and trying to make it their own. All of the perseverance plays, I think, a big key. This is one of my things I preach is perseverance. You can't defeat somebody who never quits. and our service is still running. Canada Revenue has shut down all these other services. So now all these mortgage brokers have nowhere else to go to get this service. And
Wow.
I'm trying to be humble about it, you know, without rubbing it in their faces, but we're doing it in a subtle way, is doing this 12 city tour across Canada to meet brokers personally and let them know that our service is still continuing without announcing it, you know, over the internet. So I believe you're doing the same thing, you know, living a humble life here in Vancouver and still doing what you're doing and still being active, still, you know, grateful that you came on the podcast and sharing all, you know, your wealth of knowledge. Quick question for you though. We mentioned this, it's not a trick question, but you know, if you have your books, but maybe two, because you've probably gone through so many books in your past, two books you could recommend to our listeners who are mostly entrepreneurs, a lot of people in the network marketing industry, salespeople that come onto our podcast. Two books that you could mention and probably why you love them so much.
Jay. The first one that comes to mind is a book called Getting to Yes by Roger Fisher and William Ury, which is a great book, and it's not what it seems. And you've got to be prepared to be open about that. If you get an earlier copy, I've got both copies. They rewrote it, and it's sort of about, you know, another 50% larger. I preferred the first copy. It was very simple in its way, but the word Getting to Yes. Another one is oh gosh, I mean, I love Deepak's book, which is, you know, the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. I kind of have to wade through that. Each time I read it, I get something different out of it. It's a little bit of a jumble of things, but the essence of it is pretty good. Eckhart Tolle, you know, he's a good guy too. I'm just looking at my books up here. Okay, I'll see if I can throw one more at you. I've always liked, and I got good structure from this, is Neil Rackham of Spin Selling. That's what gave me an idea for structure overall. The first person that really set me on the road to finding something that resonated with me, because I started selling in 1980 and I was very successful using all the techniques, but hated every single minute of it, and always felt that there had to be a better way. I've since changed that and said into there had another way. The reason being is a better way causes conflict. You know, as Hans Peter Dürr, a German physicist that I met, he was about 70 years old, about 20 years ago, he said, you know, it's not an either or world, it's an as well world, which really resonated with me, because I realized then that you really got to look at sort of both sides of the coin. You know, you show a coin and what is it? It's a coin, but you know, there's different sides of it. And so it's really important to look at that, because there's sort of good and not so good necessarily on both sides. You want to try and blend the two there. But the person I really got that from was a guy called, hang on a second. I still have this book here. It's you know, it's really his name just popped out of my mind. I don't know why. Sorry about that. It'll come to me in a moment. But it was really about asking questions. It was about, it's called Counselor Selling, and that set me on the path. But the whole thing about that is that it was focused on getting the sale. Intrinsically inside of me was, got to move away from that, getting the sale. This is a personal need. This is our own need coming through. And then I was reading Neil Rackham quite a long time afterwards, and I could see where he was coming from, but it was still focused on getting the sale. And it was also focused on, it didn't go deep enough for me. And then eventually I kind of found out by accident what I was doing, something I was doing, but I wasn't realizing that I was doing, which was detaching. So Neil Rackham's a good guy, just to get some background there. So I gave you about 4 or 5 books, and you asked for 2, and I apologize for overstaying my welcome there.
That's fantastic. That getting to yes. My degree in university was conflict resolution and mediation, and that was one of the books that I remember from university that they presented back then. And have you ever met Eckhart Tolle? Because he's here in Vancouver, I believe, right? Yeah, I thought you might have connected with him.
Yeah, very. I didn't actually meet him, but yeah, I
Sure.
saw him, as it were. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, since we're all here in Vancouver, maybe we'll cross paths and grab a bite or lunch or some tea
Yeah.
at some point. And
We have
um,
our event tonight. Don't if you're watching the podcast, don't show up because it'll be past by then. But we do have our event tonight, and we can share that off air as well.
And okay, yeah, let me know what that is. I had another appointment tonight at 7, but I can see
And
what.
what we'll do, Michael, for the listeners, if you're listening on the podcast or if you're watching on YouTube here, we will have all of Michael's links in the chat area. Down in the description, we'll have his bio, the main website, naturalselling.com, with links to all the books on there as well. But we'll put the direct links and the books that you recommended as well. We like to get those on there so listeners don't have to go search the internet for them.
Yeah, and just pretty much remember that the ebook pretty much encapsulates all what those books are talking about. And actually, it's not the ebook; it's online course as well. Pretty much encapsulates all what those are. Those were, for me, those were stepping stones to success. Trying to work out, that there was that missing link, a missing ingredient, and then one day, and I'll share this with you very briefly. I was training people going up and down the UK, doing one-on-one sales calls set up by a telemarketing team that I set up, and my students that were saying to me, because we do one-on-one, I do the first one, they do the second appointment, I do the next one, and so on and so forth, and I sold more, and they said, well, why is it you always get the easy ones? And I used to laugh at this because it wasn't the easy ones. There was no difference because I would help them when they were doing it. I'd sort of break in and adjust their questions for them, but ultimately leave it to them. And it occurred to me that I wasn't getting the easy ones. Where I was coming from was the fact that I wasn't focused on trying to sell our service. I was trying to work out whether our service would fit what it is that they needed. And it was coming from inside. And that was a big aha moment. And then it occurs to me, okay, I've got that now. I've got to train this stuff because we need to change the sales industry into away from where it is now. But anyway, thanks for bearing with me on that last.
no, that's fantastic. And I guess what is kind of your typical client? Like, who should reach out to you? People that are kind of struggling and not where they want to be, or I know that you've done corporate trainings and so on. Like, what's kind of the demographic of people that would? Well, I think everyone would benefit from what you offer. But what kind of in particular?
Anyone, even veteran salespeople. I mean, the first step is that before I even do one-on-one, is that someone has to read the book, and they have to have taken the online course. They have to take an action on the online course, and they have to have their own script, natural selling scripting guideline. Otherwise, I get asked sometimes, "Hey, I'm taking someone else's course. I'm finding it's not working. Will you coach me?" And I go, "No, because I don't coach on other people's material. I don't know what you've got to unlearn. I don't know what you've learned, but I do know that if you take my material, then I know what to address because I can see where maybe you've got a hole in learning or understanding, and we can go there and we can work it out. But I don't touch other people's stuff."
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you for your time, and it's really great, kind of full circle. My first interaction with going in from a university student into sales, you're the person that really helped bridge that gap, and it is surreal because like I said in the beginning, I drive to Tofino a couple times a year and always have your audiobooks the whole time going in your audio course from back then. So yeah, it's really cool, and it's so cool that we're just across the pond here as well. So hope to connect further.
Okay. Well, thank you, Robert, and thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Right.
That's it. That's a wrap. They will wrap it up.
Awesome.
The editors will do a nice little job, and maybe Quentin can send you a couple of other podcasts just to get a preview, or you can get the surprise when we send you the link.
Yeah, I've got those other podcasts. Quentin had sent them to me earlier.
Yeah. So what's next for you, Michael? What's next? Yeah, any speaking gigs coming up? Another book coming?
Yeah, at the moment, what I'm doing is I do very little marketing, and I'm a lousy marketer, to tell you the truth. Have always been that way. I can either be good at one or the other, and I chose to to be good at training. But I found someone who was doing my marketing. We're sort of revamping that and putting together, and in the process, putting together videos, that type of stuff. I'll do it on TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube. Also, fine-tuning the ebook and the copy, that type of thing. Building in some meta programs. And also want to update the online course as well. I feel that I can improve on that. But that's pretty much it. I don't go out and do many talks. I don't get invited, to tell you the truth, because I think I'm so low profile that it doesn't. I don't really appear on too many people's radar. But this might change it a little bit. But I'm happy not doing that. I mean, I spent the first 10, 15 years traveling all over the world, and quite honestly, tiring. You know, I prefer to do everything by Zoom if possible.
Yeah, I heard. I still can't remember who it was. They asked some celebrity if he loved being rich and famous. He said, "Well, if I had a choice," he said, "I just prefer to be rich."
Well, do you know Brian Clemmer, the late Brian Clemmer?
No.
He was a personal growth guy, very, very well known. Has written some great books. One of them is called, How to Eat an Elephant One Bite at a Time, which, if you think about it, is a fun way of saying something quite deep. And we were on the stage together in not Saudi Arabia, in Dubai one time, many years ago. And I said, I'd love to have dinner with you. So we had dinner, just the two of us, and we sat down. And I said to him, "You're really super successful at this." I said, 100 times more than I am. I said, I know you've got a team of people. I said, I have an assistant, and so on and so forth. I don't really want to grow a huge company. That's not where I want to go. But if it means that, to get more exposure, blah blah blah. What advice would you give? And he looked at me with a really tired face, and he said, "I do what you were doing."
Huh.
And
Wow.
I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I have 52 people working for me. I have 52 mouths to feed." He said, "and it's tiring." He said, it's a burden. It's too much of a burden. He said, if I could stop all of that and do what you're doing, which is basically have one assistant and have all the support material around me, and do it sort of offline, online, so to speak. What do you call it? Virtual. Out. He said, that's what I do. He said, but I can't. I'm trapped. And that reaffirmed really what I wanted and where I wanted to go, which is I wanted to be sort of known, because obviously by being known, I could get my message out there, which I really believed in and I liked doing, but I didn't want to grow a huge organization. And besides, my assistant, she's not an employee, she's self-employed. When we first started 23 years ago, she's been with me for 23 years.
Wow.
I said, "How do you want to do this?" I said, "First of all, I will not take you on as an employee." So she giggled, and I mean, she has access to the angels. I mean, she's brilliant. And she giggled and says, "Why not?" I said, "Because I'm a lousy manager." I said, "and within a month, we'd be just tearing each other's throat out. And you feel obliged to do certain things. I don't want you to feel obliged. I want you to fight back. If you don't agree anything, I need you to say that," and so on and so forth. And it's been brilliant ever since, So it's just kind of philosophy of where I'm coming from. So I sort of sit quietly at home. Do as Franz Kafka said, you need not leave your room, remain sitting at your table and listen.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty interesting, because if you do look at the ladder of success, comes more, there's that problem, or that saying, more money, more problems, right? Like the bigger you get, the more of a target and things like that. And sometimes a quiet, simple life is definitely what I'm achieving or trying to work towards as well, keeping it as simple and smooth as possible.
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, I don't mind what you say to me. Just make sure you got my name spelled right.
Right. Yeah. You've got a great way with words, Michael, with your book and everything. Like, I've gone through this more times than probably any book I've ever read, and obviously with the audios and everything, you've really created something special. And obviously the what is it, the butterfly effect from all the other people that have kind of, you know, what Rob was saying, copying. You're the right cat that they're copying. So it might be for the best, because if you look at what Jeremy has, I think he's got, you know, 100 team members and stuff like that. The Inc. 5000, like, talk about stress, right? Like, that guy's
He's aging
I wouldn't-
fast. I've watched him online, and he's aging fast. You know, the hairline's going, the wrinkles are coming. He's looking thin. He's reap
a lot
what
of
you sow.
pressure.
Yeah, reap what you sow.
Well, yeah, because he's having to do a number of things, you know, and early this year, his main team quit on him.
Yeah,
You know, they left because of certain issues that I know about, which I'm not particularly going to share. But you know, there are a lot of people who keep me in touch with what's going on, and I get asked all the time, well, why didn't you go after Jeremy? Why do you do this? I said, well, I wouldn't know why. I said, it's great. In fact, he last year and a half, he's been doing my marketing for me, because people read stuff on Reddit, and they come to me and they buy all my stuff. They do the one-on-one coaching.
right.
So much work last year that I burned out. I had to take 3 days out and just go and meditate quietly, sticking my head in a pond, you know, just to calm down, because I bit off more than I chewed. And this year I determined that I wasn't going to do that,
Yeah.
and relax
It,
more.
rem-
But
it reminds me of the story of the fishermen off the coast of Mexico, and the three university kids go down. They're looking for a boat to charter, and all the boats are rented out because they slept in. They were drinking, and they found this old fisherman at the end of the pier, and he said, I don't usually go out, you know, after noon. They said, well, we'll pay you X amount of dollars. So they convinced him. He takes them out, and within an hour they filled the boat with fish. And he says, let's go back to shore. And they're like, yeah, we can dump off the fish and go back and get another boatload. And he said, why would we do that? And they said, well, we're Harvard business students. They said you could double your revenue, you know, and then you could get your own fish skinning plant and processing plant. And he said, why would I do that? And they said, well, then you could have a whole fleet of boats. And he said, before you know it, you could have your head office in the Bay of New York, you know, up on the top floor. And he said, why would I do that? They said, well, then you could cash in, you know, at the end, what do you call it? Have an exit strategy. Then you could retire in a little fishing village at the end of the beach on Mexico and not have to get up to work every day till noon. So why are we chasing that all the time? I don't know why.
well, you can understand it if you're younger. The whole idea is to you know, make something of your life, you know, and a lot of times ego gets in there, which urges you and moves you forward and so on. And it's hard to sort of tell a younger person, sort of focus on your purpose. You know, if you focus on your purpose and you do what you really love and really like and so on and so forth, you'll never work again. I mean, those kinds of things are philosophical. It's hard for a lot of people to pick up on. I mean, I managed to do that, but I never really knew how to interpret that. But once I learned that, I used that very effectively in when I was selling. You know, is to find out where people are coming from. It's like when I first started natural selling, I was looking for an assistant, and I'd interview assistants and everything. And I'd ask them one question. I'd ask them a number of things. I say, so let me ask you a question, whatever the name was. No, if there's one thing that you could do, you know, work out, which you would really love to do, a passion for you, and you know, and money and nothing got in your way, but you could really do it, and that would be your life, what would that be? Virtually all of them didn't talk about wanting to be an administrative assistant. None of them talked about sort of wanting to do anything close to where I was, and I realized that if they weren't there, then all they were doing is a job. I needed someone who related to what I was doing, and I was lucky to have my president assistant referred to me by a friend who understood where I was coming from, and immediately I kind of knew that this was the person that I needed to keep the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. The longevity there too. You know, I see people come and go a lot, and the fact that she's been with you that long shows that it's a great dynamic that you have there.
Yeah, and all I'm doing is helping people to readjust their lives as such. You know, even with selling insurance, the financial industry, all the various myriads there is helping them sort of find out. You know, for many of them, they're sort of stuck in a job as such, but to try and find joy from it. And as far as switching from, you know, making money to feed the family and all that stuff, which is really important, into rediscovering how they can make a difference for someone, how they can offer them something different, which the other brokers can't offer them. And a lot of that is just understanding. It's not a kind of, you're an objective of a broker who wants to sell you some kind of policy. Is that you're looking for, well, what are the real reasons for this policy, and even maybe coming up with a different policy because it serves them better. It might not serve you quite as well as such, but it still serves them, but it will serve you better because they will tell other people just who you are. I mean, it's happened to me a couple of times where I lost a couple of sales some time ago, and I got a call. This happened twice, in fact, and I got calls from the people I lost it to, and said, "Oh, by the way, I got a friend who called me about, who did I go with our system," and I told them, well, I went with so and so, but I told them that you're the person they should be talking with, and it's like, bang, that was great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you're looking for.
Yeah,
Anyway,
absolutely.
you guys know all this stuff. I'm just telling you what you already know. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. It's great. And yeah, you can never have enough good information from good people. So we appreciate you spending the time with us here. And yeah, Rob, anything else to wrap up? I guess we'll just get the links. If there's anything
we'll
you
get
want
the
us to
links
add,
and
if you want.
grab
Yeah.
a short bio from Michael, and I don't want to grab it off the website. If you have something more up to date or relevant, something that you want to get on, and then anything you want to change, once you see all the podcast links, it goes up on Apple or iTunes and YouTube and Spotify. So if you see something you want to change once it goes up, just let us know. Or if you have an update, an upcoming event or something you're launching, let us know and we'll get it out there.
Thank you. I don't want to change anything. You just go with it.
Okay, awesome. Hey, great to meet. So glad Quentin got you on.
Yeah. Thanks,
Yeah.
Robert.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Michael. All right.
We'll see you
Have a good day,
guys.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
stay well. Okay.
Thank you.